M&M's, Snickers, Twix, Skittles, Orbit, Ben's Original, Pedigree, Whiskas, Sheba, Caesar, Royal Canin. Every one of those is the same company, Mars Incorporated, private, family-owned, founded in 1911, doing revenues north of $50 billion a year. And that is not the surprising part. A confectionery giant that also sells dog food is exactly what a confectionery giant would be expected to do. This is the surprising part. Mars runs roughly 3,000 veterinary clinics: Banfield, VCA, BluePearl, AniCura, Linnaeus. It is the largest provider of veterinary care on Earth. It also owns one of the two big reference laboratories that clinics, including clinics Mars does not own, post their blood samples to. And pet care is not the side business anymore. Analysts estimate it is now more than half of everything Mars sells. The chocolate is the smaller half. So the company that makes the food, in a great many cases, also owns the clinic that recommends the food, and the laboratory that runs the test that leads to the recommendation. Between May 2024 and March 2026, the British competition regulator investigated the veterinary market. It received 56,000 responses, the most it has ever received for a single market investigation, and what it published on the 24th of March did not read like a clean bill of health. So how does a chocolate company end up owning the room where somebody in a white coat tells you what is wrong with your dog? That story starts with one clinic in Portland, Oregon in 1987. But first the scale, because almost every version of this you have heard gets it wrong in one direction or the other, and I want to tell you which parts I can prove and which parts I can't. Mars Veterinary Health operates around 3,000 clinics and hospitals. Banfield alone runs more than 1,000 locations, staffed by something like 3,600 veterinarians, most of them sitting inside PetSmart stores in the United States. VCA runs about 1,000 more across the US, Canada, and Japan, with roughly 7,000 vets. BluePearl adds around 100 emergency and specialty hospitals. AniCura and Linnaeus cover Europe and the United Kingdom. Now the number that reframes all of the others. According to Fortune's reporting on the business, Mars controls roughly 45% of every corporate-owned veterinary clinic in the United States. Not 45% of one segment, 45% of the corporate half of an entire medical profession. And here is where it gets stranger, because the next part changes the shape of the industry rather than just its ownership. In 2023, Mars paid about $1.3 billion for Heska, a maker of the diagnostic machines that sit on the counter inside a veterinary practice. That same year, it agreed to buy Synlab's veterinary laboratory business in Europe. Both went into the division that already contained Antech, the reference lab. Now consider what that means for a clinic Mars does not own. An independent practice, run by an independent vet, draws blood from an animal, seals the tube, and posts it to a laboratory owned by the largest competitor that practice has. The analyzer on the counter, the lab down the road, and the bag of food on the shelf behind reception can all belong to one group, inside a building that has no corporate relationship with that group whatsoever. That is not illegal. It is barely even controversial inside the industry. But it is the reason this story is not really about vets. It starts, as these things usually do, with one clinic and one person who noticed something. In 1987, a young veterinarian named Scott Campbell bought a single animal hospital in northeast Portland, Oregon. It had been founded in 1955, named after the freeway it sat next to, and it turned over about $2 million a year. One practice, a handful of vets. What Campbell understood was not medicine, it was footfall, except a veterinary practice is a genuinely awkward retail business. It sits on an expensive street, it is empty for most of the working day, and its customers only arrive when something has already gone wrong. The demand is real. It is also unpredictable and thin, unless you move the practice to where the customers already are. So in 1994, Campbell's company partnered with the pet store chain PetSmart to put clinics inside the stores themselves. Somebody walks in on a Saturday for a 12-kilo bag of food and a chew toy, and passes a veterinary practice on the way to the till. That same year, Mars took its first stake in the business. 13 years later, in 2007, Campbell sold his remaining shares and Mars owned all of it. Notice what that one decision did, because everything after it is a repetition of it. Before, a clinic waits for a sick animal. After, A clinic sits inside the shop where every pet owner in the area already goes every week, whether the animal is sick or not. The clinic stopped being a place you were sent to. It became a place you walked past. So how do you get from one clinic in Portland to 3,000? You do what a company with enormous cash flows and no public shareholders to answer to can do. You buy forwards, one step at a time, for 20 years, and you never have to explain the quarter to anybody. In 2001, Mars paid around $730 million for a majority of Royal Canin, the French maker of specialized pet diets. In 2007, Nutro. In 2015, BluePearl, one of the largest emergency chains in America. Which brings us to January 2017 and the deal that reorganized the industry. Mars agreed to buy VCA, Veterinary Centers of America, for $93 a share, about $9.1 billion for roughly 800 animal hospitals and Antech Diagnostics, the reference laboratory attached to them. $9.1 billion for a chain of vets, paid in cash by a company most people associate with a chocolate bar. The following year, Mars crossed into Europe, buying AniCura, around 200 animal hospitals across the Nordics and Central Europe, and Linnaeus in the United Kingdom. Now, the American regulator did look at the VCA deal, and it is worth being precise about what it did and did not say. The Federal Trade Commission required Mars to sell 12 clinics before the acquisition could close, on the grounds that in 10 specific American localities, the deal would eliminate head-to-head competition in specialty and emergency veterinary care. The clinics went to 3 buyers, including a rival roll-up called National Veterinary Associates. And for 10 years afterwards, Mars has to notify the Commission before buying certain other emergency clinics. 12 clinics out of 800. Consider what the Commission was actually asking there. It was asking whether one particular American town would still have 2 emergency animal hospitals in it. Nobody was asking what happens when the food company, the clinic company, and the laboratory company all become the same company. So why don't people simply shop around? Because a veterinary practice is not a shop, and the reason is worth being precise about. In an ordinary market, a price that is too high gets punished. People walk out, compare, come back next week, buy the other one. That mechanism needs 3 things: time, information, and the ability to say no. A veterinary consultation removes all 3. Time, because the animal is in pain now. Information, because the person telling you what is wrong is also the person selling you the answer, and there is no second opinion available at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night. And the ability to say no, because the thing on the table is not a product, it is a member of the family, and every person in the room knows it. The British investigation put a number on how badly that breaks the market. Fewer than 40% of practices publish any prices online at all. Only 29% of people receiving non-routine treatment were given written pricing information beforehand. So for most people, in most practices, the price is discovered afterwards, on a bill, at a counter, in an emotional state chosen for them by circumstance. And there's one more feature, the one that makes this industry structurally different from human medicine. Imagine walking into a doctor's surgery where the person diagnosing you also runs the pharmacy, owns the shop, and books your follow-up. In human healthcare, that arrangement is separated by law almost everywhere in the world for reasons nobody finds controversial. In veterinary care, it is simply how the room works. Which brings me to the single strangest object in this entire industry. It sits on a shelf behind the reception desk of a very large number of practices, and it costs several times what the bag next to it costs. Prescription pet food. You will have seen it, a bag or a tin sold under a veterinary label: Royal Canin Veterinary Diet, Hill's Prescription Diet, Purina Pro Plan Veterinary Diets, that a practice will only sell you with a vet's authorization. It is marketed for kidney disease, urinary problems, allergies, weight, and it is genuinely formulated for those conditions: adjusted protein, adjusted phosphorus, adjusted mineral content. Veterinary nutritionists will tell you, correctly, that these formulations do real clinical work. But here's the thing about the word prescription. What does it actually mean on that bag? There is no drug in it. Not a controlled substance, not a licensed medicine, not a product that required regulatory approval to be sold. The word is a marketing and distribution decision, not a legal category. And in 2016, a group of American pet owners sued over precisely that, arguing the label led reasonable consumers to believe the food had been through government inspection and had medicinal properties it did not have. The defendants in that case are the whole loop in a single caption: Mars Pet Care and Royal Canin, Nestle Purina, Hills, Banfield, BluePearl, PetSmart. The food makers, the clinic chains, and the retailer named on the same complaint. Now I want to be careful here, because this is exactly where most tellings of this story cheat. The plaintiffs also alleged a conspiracy, that these companies had agreed among themselves to keep the arrangement in place. In July 2020, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals looked at that claim and threw it out. It held they had not adequately pleaded an unlawful agreement. That is on the record, and I'm not going to skip past it. What the same court did do, in the same ruling, was revive the consumer protection claims. The allegation that the word prescription misleads people about what they are buying was allowed to proceed. So, no proven cartel, a live question about the label, and a structure in which the company that makes the food employs the professional who authorizes it. Which brings us to Britain, and to the most detailed examination of this industry anyone has done. The Competition and Markets Authority spent nearly 2 years on the veterinary market for household pets. It received 56,000 responses, 45,000 from the public, 11,000 from people working in the profession, which the CMA reckoned was about 1 in 5 of every vet and veterinary nurse in the country. Nothing else in the authority's history has drawn that. So what does 2 years and 56,000 responses actually turn up? The final report landed on the 24th of March, 2026. Average veterinary prices in the UK, found, have risen by more than 60% since 2016. Fewer than half the people using a practice owned by one of the large corporate groups knew that their practice was part of a chain. More than 70% of pet owners buy long-term medication directly from their vet, in many cases paying over £200 a year more than the same medicine costs elsewhere, because the fee for the piece of paper that lets you shop around was frequently £30 or more, which is enough to make shopping around pointless. Pet owners were paying about £100 more than they needed to for an individual cremation. And 4 of the large groups, CVS, IVC, Pets at Home, and Vet Partners, were found to be earning profits materially above their cost of capital. Martin Coleman, who chaired the inquiry, put it in a single sentence: "Too often, people are left in the dark about who owns their practice, treatment options, and prices, even when facing bills running into thousands of pounds." Read the remedies, and the diagnosis is unmistakable. Practices will have to publish standard price lists, give written estimates for anything expected to cost £500 or more, cap the prescription fee at £21 for the first medicine and £12.50 for each one after, publish cremation prices, including the cheaper communal option, up front, and 2 that give the whole game away. The first, every large group must state its ownership clearly on its signage and on its website, because the brand on the door is very often the name of the family practice it used to be, and the regulator concluded that people genuinely did not know who they were dealing with. The second, practices must adopt written policies protecting a vet's clinical independence from commercial pressure. Sit with that one for a second. A competition authority does not write that sentence about a medical profession unless it has concluded the pressure is a live risk. Those remedies become binding by the 23rd of September 2026. So who exactly is going to have to put their ownership on the door? The investigation centers on 6 large groups: CVS, IVC, Linnaeus, Medivet, Pets at Home, and Vet Partners. Against roughly 1/10 of the market in 2013, the corporate groups are now reported to own the majority of British practices. Linnaeus is Mars. IVC Evidensia, is the largest veterinary group in Europe, about 2,500 clinics across 20 countries, backed by the private equity firms EQT and Silver Lake, valued at around €12 billion in a 2021 funding round, and reportedly preparing for a stock market listing. One of its minority shareholders since 2019 is Nestle through Purina, its pet food business. Consider the 2 sentences that produces. The largest pet food company in the world holds a stake in the largest veterinary group in Europe. The second largest pet food company owns the largest veterinary business on the planet outright. And the same pattern appears one level down. IVC and Vet Partners own crematoria. Medivet and Vet Partners own diagnostic laboratories. When an animal is referred, tested, treated out of hours, or finally cremated, the destination is frequently another business inside the same group, with a different name over the door each time. Now you might be thinking that this is the point where I tell you consolidation caused all of it. I can't show you that, and neither did the regulator. What the CMA did find is narrower and more careful, that prices at some large groups rose significantly more than at comparable independent practices, that 4 groups earned returns materially above their cost of capital, that the market's information failures are severe enough to dampen competitive pressure across the board. But veterinary costs genuinely rose for honest reasons too, and any account that skips them is propaganda. Veterinary medicine got dramatically better. Animals now receive MRI scans, chemotherapy, and orthopedic surgery that did not exist as options 20 years ago, and good medicine is expensive. There was a severe shortage of vets, which pushed wages up. Practice premises, equipment, and drugs all inflated. This is not an industry where the cost line was standing still. And I want to say something about the people in the room, because they take the blame for all of this, and they did not build it. The veterinarian examining your dog is typically carrying enormous student debt, working through a profession with one of the highest recorded suicide rates of any occupation, and absorbing the anger of every person who has just been handed a bill they cannot pay. The 11,000 industry responses to the CMA were not, on the whole, a defense of the status quo. The structure is the subject here, not the person holding the stethoscope. So what does an industry do once the clinics, the laboratories, the crematoria, and the food are all spoken for? It moves to the thing that pays the bill. JAB Holding is the investment company of the Ryman family. Its portfolio is a list of things you would never file together. Krispy Kreme, Pret-a-Manger, Panera, Keurig Dr. Pepper. It is also the controlling shareholder of National Veterinary Associates, the same roll-up the FTC handed those divested clinics to in 2017, now more than 670 hospitals. And it owns pet insurance, Independence Pet Group in North America, Pumpkin, Pinnacle Pet Group in Europe. One owner, the clinics on one side, and the insurance that reimburses the clinics on the other. Notice the shape of that, because we have seen it before on this channel. It is the eyewear structure exactly. One group holding the frame, the lens, the shop, and the vision insurance plan. It took EssilorLuxottica 60 years to assemble. In veterinary care, it has taken about 15. But why did the money come here at all? Because the underlying behavior changed. Pets moved from the yard into the bedroom. People started calling themselves parents, buying insurance, authorizing 4,000-pound surgeries on a 13-year-old dog. That shift is real, and it is not cynical. It is love, and it is one of the more decent things about how people have changed in 30 years. Capital noticed the love, then it bought the infrastructure the love has to pass through. None of this makes anyone a villain. It is legal, it has been disclosed, and it has been examined twice by the Federal Trade Commission in 2017 and the Competition and Markets Authority in 2026, with changes required both times. But price is set by what a market will tolerate, and tolerance is decided by where a person can go instead. When the clinic, the referral hospital, the Antec or Medivet laboratory, the pharmacy shelf, the crematorium, and increasingly the insurer all sit inside one group, and when the sign outside still says the name of a family practice from 1974, and the number of places to go instead is smaller than it looks from the waiting room. And you can still get out of most of it. Independent practices exist, and many of them are excellent. Ask for a written estimate before you agree to anything. And from this September in Britain, they have to give you one over 500 pounds. Ask for the written prescription and buy the medicine elsewhere. That will now cost you 21 pounds instead of 30 plus. If somebody recommends a diet, ask what is in it that the cheaper bag does not have, and get a real answer, because there is often a real answer. Most people will never ask any of it, not out of laziness. Think about the only moment those questions ever come up. The animal is on the table. Someone in a white coat is explaining what has to happen next. And the honest answer to, how much is this going to be, is that nobody wants to be the person who asked. That is the whole mechanism. Not fraud, not a conspiracy. The Ninth Circuit went looking for one in 2020 and did not find it. Just ownership, assembled patiently over about 15 years, sitting behind one of the last professions people still walk into without checking the price. So next time you are sitting in one, look at that invoice. Look at the small print under the logo or the company name at the bottom of the practice's website. There will be a name on it you were not expecting.